Tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai. I am absolutely stoked today to have the fabulous Michele A'Court on our podcast. She is one of New Zealand's most respected comedians and writers. With a career spanning decades, she's known for sharp political and social commentary, regular media appearances, best-selling books and fearless advocacy. She's been awarded Officer of the New Zealand Order of Merit. She is an award-winning comedian. She has a regular column in the New Zealand Woman's Weekly. You will know the name, you have seen the face, and it is an absolute pleasure to have you here on the show today, Michele. Welcome.
Oh, that's lovely, Jess. Kia ora, thank you. What a nice intro. I get a little, I don't know if you can see, you saw my face, they can't see my face, but when anybody talks about the Officer of the New Zealand Order of Merit, I just get this, it's a little tingle of joy. That's such a cute thing. You get an email in advance, like October or something, before the New Year's honours, saying that, they'd like to give this to you. If they offered it to you, would you accept it? And I absolutely thought it was a scam. I thought, someone's playing a trick on me. And I did all the due diligence, and I took telephone numbers and addresses out of the email and stuck them into Google to see if they were for real. And yeah, that's very cute. So yeah, lovely thing. That was really great.
Oh, an amazing thing, and so nice that you can get a tingle of joy over that now, as you should, because it's years of work that have gone into you getting that offer in the first place, right?
Yeah. And it's, the thing I love about those awards too, sorry, I shouldn't be banging on about it, but it's for anybody can be nominated by the people around them in their community. And it's something that I've done for people. When somebody does something spectacular over a long period of time, then you can nominate them. It's a not a top down, it's a bottom up kind of system, which I really like. Yeah,
really interesting to know. I had no idea. I think many listeners wouldn't either. That's really nice to know that we could actually nominate. I thought you just had to work hard for years and years until someone noticed, and then you get the email.
Well, no, it's your community. So it's your peers who will get together and quietly behind your back, without letting you know that they're doing it, get together and write letters and apply to internal affairs. So that's the thing that I really like about it. So and I like getting that message out to the communities, because it means if there's somebody in your community doing something amazing, you can get them a thing.
Yeah, nice. I like it. And you deserve a thing. I mean, when we look back at all of what you've achieved and what's gotten you to where you are now, and a household name, and doing some amazing things across Aotearoa and beyond, I guess it's not always been easy, and there would have been times that maybe, particularly as a woman in a very male-dominated industry, it's been a challenge. So what have you had to unlearn to kind of claim your authority in this space?
Yeah, it's been a long time. I started doing stand-up in 1993, really, when I was pregnant with my daughter. Which is a ridiculous time to start doing a new thing, but I did. And stand-up comedy was at its very infancy then, and so I was kind of starting at the same time as anybody else. So there wasn't anyone. There's two things about that. One is that there isn't anybody as a gatekeeper at that point. It was pretty democratic. If you wanted to give it a go at Kitty O'Brien's in Auckland, you could give it a go. So no gatekeepers, but also no role models and no mentors available for you to go, what does the past look like? How does this work? So, it was relatively welcoming. The people who were around were mostly men. There were very few women, but they were welcoming largely, not always, but I was probably older than the ones who weren't welcoming, so I used some of that age authority to ignore that. But yeah, I mean, the tricky thing about those early days was that there were so few women that we didn't meet each other. We didn't work together. That was the wild thing. You couldn't have more than one woman on a bill, because then everybody would think it was a special night. Was it a fundraiser? So there'd be a number of men and you. And so we didn't get to meet each other. We didn't tour together. We didn't see each other's work. We didn't hang out in the green room. So a bunch of us started to create our own work so that we could spend time together. So Justine Smith, Irene Pink, Cal Wilson, Jack Tweedy, back in those early days, we would organise shows together. And I think that really taught me the importance of collaborative work and the loneliness of being the only one like you in the room, whoever that is, whether it's because of your ethnicity or your sexual orientation or your gender diversity or your neurodiversity. Being the only person in the room is unsustainable, really. What does that research tell us? That you need 30% of the people in the room need to be like you for you to be able to really make real change and have real impact on what happens next. So yeah, so those years were tough, and we've had other tough periods. We had in our industry, we had a pretty rough period around the Me Too time when suddenly women started revealing that they had that there was sexual assault and lower level just being harassed, which weirdly I was less aware of because I was so much older and not a part of that cohort. But we set up a group that did some really significantly good work in that space of making it really clear that, God, it sounds so pathetic when you say it out loud, that your workplace is not your hunting ground. And this is not what comedy is for. It's for us in our industry. It's a strange environment in some ways because we work in bars where most people are drinking, and we work at night, and we work when other people are having their downtime. That's our workspace. So hospital workers also experience this same challenge. So yeah, and that was I found that heartbreaking and devastating. I think I found it even more heartbreaking that I had been unaware of so much of what was going on. But I think we've made some really good changes in that area now. And again, it's been about the collaborative thing. It's been about women getting together and getting shit done. Yeah, setting up networks, making safe channels for people to report. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and it makes sense that, if you didn't hang around together and you weren't on bills together, you wouldn't see what was happening to others. And then they felt more isolated too. And then there was this aspect of putting up with it, which, when you look at how far we've come because of movements like that, it's a very different space now. Although I'm sure there's still similar challenges that some people have to face into day in, day out. And like you say, it's quite a unique environment from kind of what we would deem, a normal workplace or the average workplace that everybody else gets to hang out in.
Yeah, it's everybody else's party environment. But there's also, I was just thinking, one of the things that you just said about what we will accept, and I look back at what I have accepted in terms of people's behaviour and go, oh my God, how did I allow that to happen? And I mean in the corporate space as well. There's one really good example for me of that. It would be probably 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. I went to do a corporate event in a city outside of Auckland, and the guy who was it was for an organisation, and he was the president of that organisation. And when this is not really funny, when I arrived, I was told to go meet him upstairs. I was emceeing their annual awards evening, dinner and awards. Go meet him upstairs. And he was in his office. And as I walked into his office, he started taking his trousers off, ostensibly to change into his evening clothes. But just, we'd never met. And he told me that he had booked me to be the MC for this event because he used to watch me on What Now when he was a young man, and that he used to masturbate while he watched me on What Now. And so it was very exciting for him to finally meet me in the flesh.
Gosh, I'm with no trousers.
It's just,
It is almost disbelief, eh? You know, when we talk about this now in today's climate, it's like, did that happen? But at the time, it was like, okay, this is normal.
Yeah, I think I'm massive. Well, I know I just went into total denial of this is not happening. I'm pretending that this is not happening, and we're just going to continue having a pleasant conversation, and then I'll go downstairs and MC this event. But it was just, it's now there is no way that I would, and that wasn't the end of it that evening. But now there is no way I would now turn around and walk out, get in my car, drive back to Auckland. I would not put up with that. But it's amazing how, that was the shock of Me Too, wasn't it? When we all went, oh, did it happen to you? It happened to me. It happened to all. I thought it was just me, so I was being about it.
And we thought it was normal in that we had to say, well, this is part of the job. And if we say anything, we're going to lose the job and we need the money and we're trying to build our careers. And your confidence has obviously evolved with, the passing of time and you getting, known. And I think, with age as well, the older we get, the more sure of ourselves we sometimes become. What would you tell women that feel a bit invisible or feel like they can't challenge in similar kind of situations, particularly when we're in that mid-career space and we're kind of, getting on the ladder and climbing up, and we have this feeling sometimes of being invisible or being taken advantage of? What would your advice be?
Find a woman you trust, or it doesn't have to be a woman, but for me it would most often be find someone you trust to have that conversation with about it, so it's not just you. Never just be you if you can avoid it. Just, it's like I said about don't be the it's not terrific to be the only person like you in the room. So find someone you trust and share that information, because the reason straight after that happened, I told someone what had happened as a jokey story. Look what happened to me last night. And the look on this person's face, who wasn't in my industry, an older woman, was, but that is not acceptable. And you suddenly go, oh, shift my gauge of what is acceptable back to what I intrinsically know inside myself, and rather than what the world, the capitalist patriarchy, is presenting as acceptable to me, right? So if you're feeling invisible, if somebody is making you uncomfortable, if it feels wrong, it is wrong, and have a conversation quietly with someone you trust to see where you can take that and get support to stop it. I think that's great advice. And that's one thing the Me Too movement showed. We're not on our own, even though we perhaps felt like it at the time. We're not on our own, and that when you've got support and other people's ears, you feel so much stronger than to actually do something about these things that crop up. Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it's a really good reason to belong to a union or your association or whatever it is in your workplace. We started the New Zealand Comedy Guild in the late 90s, partly for this reason, so that there is somewhere to go. There's a network available to people. So just say it out loud, speak up, but don't do it alone. I think it's really important to have support.
Yeah, definitely. And we've seen that, right? In terms of it's not always safe to speak out when you're alone, in terms of, having support, but being believed as well. And all of that kind of worms that gets opened up.
I took it to a dark place quite quickly, didn't I, Jess?
These are the places we want to go here, right? This is the reality. And I think, there must have been so many, not just moments like that, but moments of challenge where you almost backed out and thought, what? Stuff this, but you didn't, and obviously you're where you are now. What are some of those moments where you can remember almost wanting to throw in the towel and go, actually, no, I'm not doing this, and obviously but you didn't, and you're here now? What made you push through?
Well, so part of it was desperation.
Great motivator.
Hunger is a great motivator. So I ended up, so I had a beautiful daughter in 93, as I mentioned, because I was pregnant when I started doing stand-up here in Auckland. I'd come from a, performance background and whatnot, but stand-up started in 93. And her father and I separated near the end of the 90s, like 98. And so I was on my own. And And so I just had to think of everything that I could possibly do to make enough money, but also be around for her. So, and I couldn't afford childcare. I was really lucky. I had my mum and dad living here. So they were very helpful. But I said yes to everything. And I probably said yes to some comedy gigs that I shouldn't have done. Go to an industrial estate in South Auckland where there's a bar set up in a garage and do a gig there. And I'd only been doing stand-up for a short time. And, it was rough as guts. And a good gig meant that they stopped playing pool while you were on stage. It was just like, man. Yeah. And I think one of the things that I started doing then was swearing a lot on stage. I still swear, but that was a tool in my belt in those days to just cut through, and it worked. So you do it. Specific instances of just pushing through. I mean, every now and then somebody would tell you that you didn't belong there, or and it just fires me up to prove that it does. Yeah. I was really lucky in the 90s that Debbie Tors, who started Celebrity Speakers, came to me. She saw me do comedy at the Classic Comedy Club in Auckland, and she came to me and said, you should be doing after dinner entertainment. And I was like, what? She said, yeah, rugby players and businessmen go to corporate dinners, and in between the main course and dessert, they do a keynote speech. You should go and do comedy there. And I was like, wow, okay. Well, feel a little bit ill just thinking about it, but yes, okay. And I said, what is that worth? And I think at that point, so this is like 97, 96, at that point, you get $40 for a comedy set at the Classic or Kitty O'Brien's or wherever it was. And she said I could get $400 for the same set at a dinner.
Wow.
That's a lot of groceries. And so I tried it, and the first one was horrific. I think it was for Air New Zealand, and it was excruciating. And I don't know if the feeling of being on stage and it not working is like, I'd like to describe it as being naked in front of your aunts and uncles and cousins, is the ones that you don't really like, with your pubic hair on fire. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, certainly the ground wanting to swallow you up, eh?
Oh man. So I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it certainly was not great at all. And so but I just kept going, and Debbie kept going, no, you'll get it, you'll work it out, how to do this. And that has been a lifesaver. I really owe Debbie for that. Debbie passed away I think in the early 2000s, and yeah, I miss her. She was terrific. She was somebody who really, that was an opportunity that was incredibly valuable to me. And yeah. And then, moved from after dinner speaking to emceeing conferences, which I really adore. I love that. Comedy is such a lonely, and writing, both things are really lonely and solitary. And so to pop in and MC a conference for 3 days and get to know 500 people and feel part of a thing is, I revel in it. That's really fun.
Yeah, and I think so often on our journeys, we need people like Debbie. We need people that see something in us that we can't yet see in ourselves, or just point us in the right direction, and they see that we're capable before we realise that we are, and then we're off and away. But without them seeing that, it's difficult to see it for yourself. And I think so often as women, we're trying to balance this very fine line between being powerful and having our opinions and forging our way with our ambition and drive, whilst also not trying to upset too many people along the way. And that can be hard as a woman, particularly if you've got strong opinions and you're perceived as a threat to others, and particularly if you're in the spotlight, right? What's your advice around how we balance that? Because there must have been times, you've been criticized publicly, not everyone likes us, and sometimes we have this pressure to be likable instead of embracing our true power. Sure, because you must have had so much experience in this space.
Yeah, so I'm a chronic people pleaser, and which I think most performers are, and not just performers, but we want people to be pleased. It's not. I don't think that it's like there's a piece missing that we need a room full of strangers to give us. But I want to every time I walk onto a stage, I want to make the room happy. I want people to feel happier by the end of my time on stage than they did at the beginning. That's the point of comedy and entertainment. So I want to please people, but I have spent I've spent some time with a therapist, Jess.
Nice.
And how I think of it now is that I have to bake my own cake, and I will let other people ice it, but it's my cake and I made it. So I have to be happy with who I am. I have to feel like I'm doing so my fundamental belief is the Alice Walker quote that activism is my rent for living on the planet. I want to contribute to the world and do my bit to make it a better place. And if I'm happy with that, then that's my cake, and that's good. And when other people come and say, yay, you did a good thing, or you made me laugh, or you made me happy, or you made me think about something in a different way, that's my icing.
Yes.
So, and that's a work in progress. I have not achieved that. And, the self-doubt is there, and self-doubt's great because self-doubt stops you from being a dick, and it makes you try harder and get better and be a work in progress. So one of the other things that I've learned recently through therapy and just is that you keep learning the same lessons, and that's okay. Like I used to go, oh my God, I've just learned that again, and I learned that 10 years ago, or I've made the same mistake. And it's like, that's the work. You can expect to continue to make the same mistakes. That's okay. That's just learning the lesson harder, learning the lesson deeper, learning it better. And don't berate yourself for a repeat mistake. This is a woman talking to you who's had 3 marriages.
Lots of learning opportunities.
Yeah, that's my word. Am I an expert, or the other thing? I don't know. But yeah, it's just, that's okay. That is life, to just keep on. It's just made me drift into thinking about, meditation when I don't know if you meditate, but so I meditate. And I've learned recently from an English Buddhist monk that when your mind drifts off and you pull it back to the breath, that's the work. The achievement in meditation is not the moment where you are just your breath. The work is to bring your mind back to the breath. So every time my mind wanders in a meditation and I go, whoa, my mind has wandered, I'm bringing it back to the breath, that's the work.
Yeah, that's a tick in the box. That's a job well done, right? Rather than, oh my God, my mind is so busy, I'm failing at this, which is often where we go to.
Yeah.
You touched on sort of, doing good work, supporting others. I think, particularly when we're in these positions and you've learned what you've learned, it's such a privileged place to be, and not everybody gets that privilege. And I know you're involved in many different aspects of advocacy and allyship across Aotearoa. And one particular thing that caught my eye is the Pakeha project. And I think we've come a long way in this space here in Aotearoa, and we're taking some backward steps. And I think there's many of us in a position of, how do I be a good T3T partner, but a little bit worried about, what if I get it wrong? What if I mess up and say the wrong thing and offend someone? What's the Pakeha project about, and what's some advice you can give for other people looking to be a good T3T ally?
Yeah, fantastic. So the Pakeha project has been going for about 4 or 5 years now, and I did the leadership program last year, and I'm continuing this year because I love the work so much. And it's about diving into who we are as Pākehā. And, the goal is that one day we could say, this is what a good Pākehā looks like. And this is what fulfilling our responsibilities and joy as partners in Te Tiriti looks like. This is what it means. And so the program has been, the study has been about many things, constitutional imaginaries, working out, if New Zealand had a constitution, what would it look like? And so that kind of stuff. Also, we have been encouraged to look into our whakapapa, look into understanding who we are and where we come from. It's really interesting for me. My daughter is Māori. She's Ngāti Ranginui from Tauranga Moana, and my moko are Ngāti Ranginui and Ngāpui. So I really treasure my place in their whakapapa, but I haven't until recently spent time thinking about who my people are, why they came here, where they came from, what their rituals might be, what their belief systems, what their connection to the whenua might be. So I've been doing that work, and that's been really fascinating for me to kind of meet my ancestors as real people, and think about, what brought them here? What would they, so I found that an incredibly rich experience. And it means that what we're doing is not appropriating somebody else's tikanga. We're drawing on our own, which is really important. Knowing who we are is, you have to know who you are before you can meet somebody else, right? So there's that work as well. And then there's the work of finding our place on this whenua and where we belong, what our responsibilities are to the people whose land it really is. So all sounds reasonably abstract, but lots of it is incredibly practical. And, we have some lovely exercises where we go to retreats at the Friary in Hillsborough, and each morning before study starts, we all have a tree, and we all go out and just lean against the tree. No. And have a chat with it, and it's a really ancient practice, which feels ridiculous at first to somebody like me. It's like, what are we doing? And then you go, oh, okay, no, trees actually have it warmth. Like, if different trees have different temperatures, and also there's just the idea of it's been here for longer than any of us, and it just continues to flourish. So maybe my anxieties and issues aren't so permanent. Maybe they're temporary as opposed to a tree. I probably sound like a case at this point, but no.
It makes a lot of sense. I think we can learn so much from not just our Indigenous cultures, but ancient wisdom, because it stood the test of time for a reason, right? This stuff makes sense. They knew things without the science having to back it up. They just inherently knew that this was right. And I think there's a lot that we've perhaps lost touch with as we've developed and modernized.
Yeah, I mean, colonization means that we lost our culture as well. I look at my great grandparents who came here, and they left behind their everything, and I'm not sure really what Pākehā have replaced it with, and I don't think Pākehā are either. So I think we're having that thought process now. But also, aside from that too, we all know, because the world, I don't know if you've looked recently, Jess, but I believe it's going to hell in a handbasket.
I try not to, but yes.
Turned all of the news notifications off on my phone because I just can't take it anymore. But we all know instinctively that if you're feeling terrible, go for a walk, or stick your feet in the ocean, or have a swim, or we know that connecting through the whenua is the thing that makes us well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that invitation for us to connect to what matters, but also to connect to our own self, where we're from, what matters to us, what's made us who we are, because that's how we meet others. Michèle, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'd love to know, and for those listening, what are you up to? What's coming up for you in the schedule this month? How can we find out more about that or you and your work?
Absolutely. You can go to my website and micheleacourt.com. I know it's so imaginative, but I usually have my gigs on there. I'm in Mission Bay on the 20th of March, if anybody has a chance to do that. I'm doing 7 days. The Auckland Writers Festival, I have 2 sessions in the Auckland Writers Festival that I can't tell you about yet because they haven't launched them, but I'm very excited about the 2 writers that I'm going to get to talk to over that weekend. So there's a few things to look forward to. But yeah, my website generally has a reasonably up-to-date list of what I'm doing. When I get really busy, it's not up to date.
Funny that, eh? Fabulous. We will put the website in the show notes so that people can go and find those events. We'll catch you at the Auckland Writers Festival, and for those around in Mission Bay on the 20th, hop along and connect with Michèle and have some warmth and some joy in your life. Michèle, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Jess. That was lovely.